Hey friends, and welcome back to my channel. It's Theresa here. Today I have a art journal layout for you for the Clique Kits creative team. I'm working primarily with the Tehuana kit, which features a new company called Love in the Moon, and this kit features primarily Friday Kahlo, and it's just a gorgeous collection and seemed perfect for an art journal page. And what I wanted to do today is to inspire you to pull out a failed art journal background. Have you ever done that? You've created worked on an art journal layout and got to a certain point and you realized that it was just ruined. And well, that's what happened to me with this page. And I'm not going to show you the whole process that I got to where I started my layout today, but I thought I would show you exactly where it all went wrong. And so I was working with some of these Prima Alchemy paints, and I had put down some just torn paper strips, put gesso over it, and then was working this paint onto the page. And okay, like honestly, who knew that mixing wet dark purple with white gesso would make gray? But sure enough, here it goes. It starts to become a little muddled and gray, and I'm still adding paint to it and recognizing though that it's going south in a hurry. I thought, well, let's add a little more of the dark purple. But a note to self, working heavy layers of paint like this and not allowing it to dry in between is definitely what took this down this path. And here's where I said, screw it, this just isn't really gonna work, and I called it a day. And I put the page down, and frankly, I forgot about it. But then today, I wanted to work with these Friday Kahlo papers. And so I pulled it back out, and so what I want to encourage you to do is to pull out a abandoned art journal background if you have one. If you don't have an abandoned art journal background, let me tell you what to do. Take the easy way. Just take a gray paint and a pink paint and put it on your paper, and you'll be ready. You'll be ready for this page. But I honestly think that this technique can be used pretty much with any art journal background that you're not happy with. And you're kind of going to just start over and pretend like it never happened. And so I also had this beautiful stencil from the Crafters Workshop. And you can see my muddled up, very gray background. It's really not that bad now that I come back to it and look at it. But on that day, it definitely looked ruined to me. So I'm going to take this stencil and modeling paste, and I'm going to cover a lot of that background. It's not going to cover it completely. It's just going to give a really nice distressed look behind what we're trying to do here. And so I'm going to apply the modeling paste just directly over this stencil, using some of these, highlighting some of the floral elements in the stencil. And so you'll see me pick it up and put down one flower or two flowers, pick it up again and put down all of them. One of the things that happens when you work with a smaller template or a smaller stencil like this is that you do get the lines on the edges, and you'll see how I deal with that. There's a couple of ways you can work with that. One, obviously you can work with a larger stencil, with a 12 by 12 stencil onto this art journal. I think is about 8 inches high and 7 inches wide, or 14 inches wide. So obviously a 12 by 12 stencil would be big enough to cover each side, or you can just do one flower at a time and not go all the way to the edge of the stencil. Or you can actually layer the stencil over an element that you already put down, and you can see how I'm doing that here, and that will sort of blur that line where those two meet. And you can see I'm going to do it again here, and that's kind of a cool way to have an overlapping effect for the modeling paste. It still didn't like ease those lines perfectly, but I'm going to tell you that as soon as we begin to add the elements on the page, you won't really see that by the time it's done. You'll just hopefully see these beautiful flowers and what we're going to do with them with the paints. So I put the modeling paste down, waited for it to dry mostly, and then also applied a layer of gesso because it still seemed to be a lot of contrast, a lot more contrast between the background and the flowers, more contrast than what I really wanted. And the gesso will allow some of that beautiful failed background to show through. So we're still going to have that in the layout, and it's still value in creating that background. We're just going to turn it into something that we love. And I just do really want to say to you that even when you have an art journal background that you feel like didn't go the way you wanted it, there's still tremendous value in the fact that you did it and you made this thing, even if it didn't work out, even if you don't like it, there's still tremendous value. And I definitely for sure learned that dark purple and white will turn gray. You would think I already knew that, but anyway, so what I'm going to do next here is I'm pulling out some paints, and I realized that Tim Holtz paint was dried up, so I'm going to toss that. And then all of the colors that I'm using here are Heidi Swap, and I'll specify what those colors are for you down below or on my blog post, and so you can use the same ones if you like. And you'll see here that I'm just taking a very wet paintbrush, very wet paint. This is the Heidi Swap Shine sprays, but I use them just like paint. And I love that what happens is when you put these down on the paper and you use a very wet brush and then you spray water on it, they will run across the page. And check out how pretty that is because the paint starts to run into the lines that we created with the stencil. And this is my favorite way to use stencils. You can take a paper towel and pull up some of that paint and start over if you want to, or to make it lighter, or then go back and make things a little bit darker where you want them. You can sort of adjust your color palette on the page that way. And I'm just kind of letting this flow together. I'm not really worried about, oh, this is a yellow flower, this is a pink flower, this is an orange flower. Not worried about that at all. But what I am keeping in mind while I'm doing this is how do the colors blend across the page, and is there a spot that has more pink than what I want? Then add a little bit of orange. Is there a spot that has a little more yellow than what I want, then add a little bit of pink, and just sort of go across the page that way. And also, just a tip is to work in small sections. So if you're going to work in the upper right hand corner, just stay in that corner until you kind of have it set the way you want it with all the different colors. And I don't worry too much about whether a different color is on my brush. And I know watercolor artists are going to come at me for that. Please don't come at me. This is just how I like to do it. And to me, it kind of feels more free and relaxed. And I don't have to obsess over whether it's perfect or not. Remember that the point in art journaling is to represent, not necessarily to show detail. And this really, even as I'm looking at it, going on the page now, it's so pretty and it turns out beautiful. One thing that you'll notice, a couple of things as I'm wrapping up this part of the process is once I get all the colors down on the page and I feel like it's covered, I do go around the edge with a more detailed, with a darker color, just to make sure that the border of the page is well outlined. And then another thing I did was I took those colors and that very wet paintbrush and I sprinkled or splattered some of those pink colors too. And you can go around the page and add darker details in spots where you feel like it needs it, especially if you want a little more contrast. And then while that was drying, it took a while for it to dry, I went ahead and did a bit of fussy cutting. And so I cut out Miss Frida here. Look how stunning that is. And I also cut out some of the butterflies that are on the vellum included in this kit. It's the butterfly vellum from Vicki Boutin's Fernwood collection. And those butterflies are absolutely stunning. And so what I'm going to do, I went ahead and plugged in my glue gun so that can be warming up, and then I'm going to stamp a little bit on the background. And so I'm working with a stamp set. I will have the link for this stamp set down below. It's from a company called Happy Little Fox. And let's see, I'm looking to see if the stamp set has a title on it. Pieces of Me, perhaps? But there were a couple of things. There was a French quote, which I love, and I'm not going to try to butcher it and pronounce it for you, but it's a quote from Coco Chanel. And then it also had these little florals. And so my purpose in using this was to bring in a little black outline here to fill in some of the spaces on the layout that did not get stenciled. So remember where that little failed background shows through? That now has these gorgeous floral stamps. And like, what a way to come to peace with that background and to come to peace with this layout. And that looks really nice there. I'm just kind of layering them a little bit. There's a larger flower that I paired with one of the smaller ones, and then there's also these leaves, and they're gonna just appear here and there around the page. And then once I've got the stamping done, let's start adhering these elements to the page. So I hope my glue gun is done by now. It is. This is a brand new glue gun to me, so I'm just taking a minute here to figure it out, and it's pretty trigger happy. So I have two main clusters that I cut out. The one with Frida on the left, and then a smaller one on the right that's just flowers and leaves. And then I also, to create a little bit of dimension, cut out a smaller floral that's like a corner there on the lower left hand side. And then here are these beautiful butterflies, and they are vellum, and they have the most beautiful gold foil to them, so they're going to catch the light as you look at this page. And they just bring a little pop of color, a little bit of ethereal feel to the page. And look how pretty that is. I kind of just scattered those. I didn't really have a particular page design in mind for how I was using those. And so then one last thing that I wanted to do was just add my quote, or add the words to this page. It's what I call a working title, where I'm expressing what I'm thinking about as I'm creating this page. And one of the things that inspires me about Friday Kahlo, if you're not familiar with her story, I encourage you to look her up, read more about her. She was just a vibrant young girl in love, and she suffered a horrible, debilitating accident. And a lot of her art grew out of that accident and what happened to her. And I find that incredibly inspiring and humbling. Just one, she was incredibly talented to begin with, but she took an incredibly difficult circumstance and made beautiful art out of it. And something that I've been practicing, it's November, and I've been practicing a gratitude project this month. And something that I've learned over the last few years is that we have to practice gratitude along with expression for pain and grief. Whatever your pain and your grief or your feelings of loss are. And because true joy, when you only express gratitude, true joy can't really happen. You have to hold space for your pain first and alongside of the gratitude. And so that's what I wanted to spell out. I'm using some older alphabets from Pink Fresh Studio, and they're just little puffy alphabets here. They're a great size for a working title like this. And the working title is going to end up reading Holding Space for Gratitude and Pain, and also Grief. And so I hope this layout inspires you today to go and create something really amazing. Check out this kit. It is the Tehuana kit, available at Clique Kits International. And join us in the Facebook group. You'll see this layout there as well. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you back here again soon. Bye-bye.